Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Deyell, Vice President of Institutional Advancement here at Canisius High School, and we're back with another edition of Conversations with Canisius, our regular Zoom series where we check in on our alums all over the country and see what they've been up to since their time at Canisius. I'm joined today by Ryan Maher, class of '92, who is the Vice President for National Accounts at Tito's Handmade Vodka. He's joining us today from Austin, Texas. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Good to be here. I'm honored to be talking to you at Canisius. I have wonderful memories there and spending some of them with you.
That's right. We've known each other for a while, and I think I would say maybe even recently reconnected in the last few years through some of the really great alumni events that the school has had. And so you're down in Austin, Texas today, and I just want to jump right in. And we have about 15 minutes and just check in with you about sort of how you're doing, what you're doing, how you got there, and what you got going on in the future. So why don't you take us through, Ryan, really quickly, your journey since Canisius High School when you graduated in 1992.
Sure. Yeah. So that was a happy time at Canisius, and I was a somewhat naive freshman senior going into freshman year in college, and I went to Fordham University. So going from Buffalo to New York City, which was always a goal of mine, but of course going to New York is a big deal. And went there, had an amazing 3 years, and I graduated in 4 years. But my junior year at Fordham, I took out and went to Oxford University, where I continued my studies in psychology and philosophy. And probably the most formative thing I've ever done in my life, just not only from an educational perspective, but the exposure to just the world and traveling, and really sort of set me up for what I'm doing today, which is being in the alcohol industry. And that's kind of a circuitous route to get there, because how are you studying psychology and philosophy and then somehow taking a career in alcohol? And the journey began when I got over there, and there was this club called the Oxford University Beer Appreciation Society. And that sounded very, very formal for what ended up being just a real passion for not only the product and, of course, consuming the product, but really the people and the history behind these products. And I was exposed to so many of these little breweries. And of course, when you're in the UK, everything is so old. And I was just struck by, wow, this is really kind of a passion of mine that was starting to come out, not only from, again, the consumption part of it, but really just knowing that there was a whole industry here that I hadn't even considered and I knew nothing about. And so when I came back to Fordham and finished up my psychology and philosophy degree, I was poised to just go on to graduate school, get my PhD in psychology, and then do whatever I would with that. And I had two things that happened. One was I took an internship senior year at Fordham, which set me on a different course. One, it was a facility for young adolescents who had a lot of issues, and I realized quickly that I didn't want to do that. It was seemingly in a clinical setting. It was a little too much, at least for a 21-year-old. And so I took that and pivoted, and I said, well, why don't I find out something about the alcohol industry and see if I can find a job there. And sure enough, I graduated from Fordham on Saturday, and Monday morning I started working at Brooklyn Brewery in New York City. And forever now, since 1996, I have been gainfully employed in the alcohol beverage industry. Wow. So, it's been a great journey. I've been with this company 8 years, and I have a team of 10 people. And what I do essentially for Tito is we call in all the national chains from Costco to Applebee's, if you will. So everything from a big box store or a supermarket that sells alcohol all the way to Applebee's or a Cheesecake Factory that obviously sells alcohol as well. So that's what we do.
I was going to ask you, what does the VP for National Accounts mean or do? And so you just explained it.
Yeah, it's an extensive travel, in fact, excessive travel of the whole United States, calling on the corporate headquarters of these major chains in the United States. And it's a whole lot of fun. The industry is a whole lot of fun. I welcome anyone who can find their way to it, because it's there's a sort of low bar for entry into the industry. But as you kind of grow up in it, you'll soon realize that it's like any other business. It's got a lot of challenges and exciting parts of it that I think if you have any interest in history and tradition, and then obviously it's a very people-oriented industry and it's a lot of fun, I highly recommend it. So.
Well, as you reflect on your time at Canisius High School, is there anything you can point to, any lessons you learned, any sort of cultural aspects about the school that helped prepare you sort of for your role today and to get to your role today?
Yeah. I had a great time there. I was supposed to go to the Franciscan school, coming out of a small Catholic grammar school, 14 Holy Helpers in West Seneca, that I think is closed now. And everyone was going to the Franciscan school. And my mom insisted, let's go find out. She had known about Jesuit education, and she felt very strongly I should go look. And I left my house that night, and I remember I'm like, there's no way I'm going, but I'll go look. And I remember going through the blue doors and then into the auditorium, and I turned to my mom and I'm like, this is it. This is the spot. And she goes, really? You haven't even seen the place? I'm like, I know. She's like, you're going to get a little bit more polish here. And I remember that very formatively, and fondly. And it set me on a course. And the place, I still look back on it so fondly because the people I met, I'm still friends with. It gave me great exposure to color, creed. There was a great diversity of people that I knew I was sheltered from, probably, maybe even unconsciously, but consciously went and saw it right in front of me. And going, taking a bus from Orchard Park to downtown Buffalo, you see quite a lot that you wouldn't normally see maybe in a suburban setting. And if I had just stayed out in the South towns, and going to the city for me was the beginning of my journey to always want to be in cities. I'm now in Austin, which is my 6th city I've lived in. I love big cities. I like the energy. I like the diversity, and I need that in my life. And Canisius sort of set me on the path to be downtown was really, really important. The other part that always sticks out to me when I look back is this Jesuit preparation for college for life, right? As a freshman in high school, you don't know what that means. But I think looking back, Canisius really set me on an amazing journey, really that started with Christian service, which I think was my junior or senior year. We had a nursing home across the street, which I went to, and had exposure to, an older population, which again, as a 17 or 18-year-old boy, you're invincible, and you don't think about the end of life. But sure enough, going over there and seeing and hearing from people and hearing their stories was really, really important to me. The other thing too, interestingly, was, the exposure that Canisius gave to, and the Jesuits in general, of always questioning, always not accepting just what's put in front of you, but really sort of digging deeper. And I think that passion was instilled in me very early there. And even I was struck by their willingness to expose a world beyond just Catholics. And really, I remember a class I had to take on world religion, and we're learning about cults and Judaism and Hinduism and Taoism and everything. And it was, for me, I was like, wow, they're not afraid to just throw it out there. And what it was doing, I didn't realize at the time, it was just saying, there's a big world out there, Ryan. You've got to go see it for yourself. You've got to go make sure that you question it, and you find a way to make it your own rather than someone telling you how it should be. And that, for me, I think was the preparation for life part. And at that time, I probably didn't know it, but through my time at Canisius and then my time at Fordham, and then of course, I also took some classes at Georgetown when I moved to DC in business administration. I've had, 10 years of Jesuit education. I look back on it, and some of the priests and some of the lay people that I met were always questioning, always pushing me forward. And even my time at Oxford, I had a Jesuit who actually was a novitiate who dropped out. But he was one of the most amazing guys I ever met. And it was the same thing. It was that just passion for education, for teaching, for learning, for wanting more. And I'll never forget it. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I went off.
Great. No, you answered that question. And I was going to follow up with a little bit of aviation formation sort of question, but I think you've explained it there very, very well.
Yeah, and now I even more so now. I have a son who's 7, and I'm in this industry which is filled with amazing people, but people who also fall on hard times, especially now during COVID. And I am a board member at what's called CORE. It's the Children of Restaurant Employees. It's a 501c3 charity that really was started by some individuals like me in the same position with other companies that said, what are we doing to give back to our industry? And what happens if the server at Applebee's child has cancer and they don't have health care? And so what CORE aims to do is take those life-altering circumstances that sometimes a child of a restaurant employee is faced with and really try to bump them up and get them back on their feet, even for a little while they have a chance to, if there's been a natural disaster, or if there's been cancer, or if they, can't pay their rent for a month. That's what CORE does. And having a child, and then also hearing some of the stories that these people who we serve bring to us, you realize how lucky you are and how grateful you are. And again, that preparation for life, I think that's where Canisius sort of centered me, grounded me, and then I've hopefully been able to live out some of those values.
That's great. Yeah. Well, you've been out of Canisius for almost 30 years, Ryan, right? So I think it's mind-blowing to think about. But as you look back, there's going to be a bunch of students, a bunch of our young alums who are going to see these videos. And one of the things I always ask is, what advice would you give to a young student, a student at Canisius High School, or someone who's just out of Canisius or just out of college, as they're walking into the wider world? What kind of advice would you give them?
Travel. For me, it has been the one constant in my life, not only moving to 6 different cities, New York, DC, Southern California, Chicago, Seattle, now Austin, but I've traveled extensively globally for work because I've represented all these global breweries and winery and distilleries. Now it's a domestic product that I sell, which is unusual for me, but both my wife and I, we love to travel. So travel. Question everything. I think, in this day and age too, we have so much access to information. There's so much misleading information or conflicting information. Try to find your own truth. Live that truth, be steadfast in it. But don't be so rock solid in it that it doesn't allow for new information to come in between the ears. And follow your passion. If I've done nothing else with this, I should have been a psychologist. And I found this passion in beer and in spirits and in the stories and the history that if I hadn't done that, I may have found myself at 46, which I am right now, sort of having that moment of career crisis and going, what have I done? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And instead, at 21, I was very fortunate to kind of get on a different train and follow it to where I am today. And, 25, 26 years later, I'm really happy doing it. And I've been gainfully employed. I've never had a day, knock wood, that I haven't. And I'm forever grateful for this industry and the people I've met and the products I've sold and the places it's taken me. So travel. If you can, study abroad. Study abroad for me, again, you heard my story, is one of the best things I ever did. It really is an experience that is like no other. And there's nothing that can prepare you for being put in a foreign country with a bunch of people you've never met. You'll learn a lot about yourself very quickly.
Great. Well, we've been talking a lot about the past. What about looking forward, looking at the future? You got any big plans for 2021, both personally, professionally? What's on the horizon for Ryan?
Yeah, so 2020 was an interesting year. I travel extensively for work and excessively. And to be home for 8 to 10 months was actually such a wonderful, refreshing break. And I was able to spend time with my wife, my son, spend time in our new home here in Austin, get to know our neighbors, things that like on a day to day when I was traveling as much as I was, 2 or 3, weeks out of a month, it made me take stock and take pause. And I'm going to take that into 2021. One of the things, it's been so easy during COVID to be negative. And one of the things that I'm trying to take to 2021 is a more positive energy, not only for myself, my family, but for my team. I work for an amazing company, an amazing guy, an amazing product that people really enjoy. And I want to represent and reflect that same passion and joy. So that's one of the things I'm working on. And I will get back to traveling, but I think I'll do it with some renewed perspective on what really matters. And for me in 2021, what really matters is still staying grounded here at home while still getting the job done, even in formats like this, which is becoming much more common in my industry and many industries of maybe you don't have to travel as much. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. But positive energy and a renewed spirit in many ways for me of like getting excited again about, whatever this new normal is going to be.
Right. Well, this has been great, Ryan. Thanks for joining me today and giving us just a little bit of your time and sharing your story with us. I hope we keep in touch, and I hope you know that your enthusiasm is contagious. You got me excited just about what's ahead in 2021. I actually feel very similar to you about 2020 was a tough year, but there was a lot, actually, if you look at this through the silver linings, our time with our family, our time maybe a little less rat racy running around has been a positive. And I think a lot of people like yourself and me included are going to try to take that forward into 2021. So thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for being with us today, and stay in touch, my friend.
It was my pleasure. Go Crusaders, and thank you for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
See you, Ryan.
Cheers.